Hello everyone, this is Addicon Podfic, back on another Podfic. This is the new fic I'm starting, the new long fic I'm starting to replace I'll Be Home with Frayed Feathers. This is a little out of the ordinary for what I would normally do, because I normally do like just Percy Jackson and like epic stuff, but I've only really done like one long epic one. So it's usually just Percy Jackson stuff. This is actually a crossover fic. This is a Percy Jackson Jujutsu Kaisen crossover, and I'm probably never going to do another JJK fic ever again. But I found this one while scrolling through fics back before the last school year ended. And I ended up finishing it in like a week, and it's really good. So I'm reading it today. This is The Storm That Unfolded by Rhaenys Falling 13. Let's start with the summary. Camp Half-Blood had been attacked, and the demigods had been slaughtered. Abandoned by the gods, all Percy could hope for was Elysium, as the blade rose above his head, and he waited for thunders to come. He woke up in an alley, unfamiliar houses all around him, and a kind woman offering him food and a place to stay. He decided to leave his past and all its ghosts behind him, starting afresh in the tiny village in Japan. As he honed his skills back up from the nothing the gods had left them with, he found release in slaughtering any monsters, or, as he found out later, were actually curses, that he came across. One in particular caught the eye of Sorcerer Society, a special-grade curse seemingly disappearing in the time between it being reported and a manager dispatched to investigate it. All they found was the rescued victims and praise for a mysterious rescuer. It wasn't long after that they found him, and the Zenin head burning his village down did nothing to endear them to him. Step in Satoru Gojo, who was always looking to flip the heads off. So began Percy's entry into the world of jujutsu sorcery, and with it came the storm that unfolded. Chapter 1. The End. He knew his time would come. It came for all of them in the end. He didn't expect it to be quite like this, sacrificed on an altar to an unknown god, his body broken down over months of isolation, cold, and hunger. It all happened so fast that he hadn't even been able to process it. The demigods caught entirely unaware. One moment they were eating strawberries on the field of Camp Half-Blood, and the second, bodies lay strewn about the ground. Screams filled the air, and terror was tangible. He didn't know who, if any, were still alive. Maybe he was the last one, the last demigod. It mattered little now. Either way, he closed his eyes as the blade was raised over his head. He focused instead on the happy times, the adventures he had, and the friends he made along the way. He remembered his mom, the taste of her blue cookies, and the smile of his little sister. He dreamed of Elysium, believing that was his destiny of his final adventure, where he would be reunited with all his loved ones. There was a moment of pain before he embraced the cold arms of death. His eyes bulged open as he sucked in a breath, so desperately it sent him into a coughing fit. His hands were grasping for purchase onto anything that might stabilize him before his brain could even process anything about his surroundings, let alone that he was moving unbound. As the coughing subsided, he weakly managed to drag himself over to a wall and use it to prop himself up. God, his legs were so weak from lack of use. You could see the outside of his bones around the threadbare rags that used to fit his body so snugly. He was still bleeding from every wound he remembered having, bar the killing blow on his neck. The world was spinning, and he wondered for a moment as he stumbled and fell on the hard dirt of the alleyway he found himself in. If there was hell beyond Hades' realm, because surely he had to be there now. He was vaguely aware of the rain that began to fall as his body gave into exhaustion, and he fell over unconscious into the puddle of mud. This time, he blinked blearily when he opened his eyes, and was met by a woman leaning over him. She had a face that reminded of his mother's, kind, with soft black hair, and earnest in the emotions it expressed. His heart ached. She said something to him, but he couldn't recognize it as English, so all he could do was stare at her blankly. Percy tried to shrink further into himself. He didn't know where he was. He was too weak to defend himself. Her worried expression softened in the face of his confusion and distress, and she tried to say something else as she reached into her bag. The sandwich she produced was hard to misinterpret, though. He clenched his weak hands around the bread, the first food he'd had since they'd taken him. He bit into it and teared up at the forgotten feeling of soft bread. He blinked to try and clear his eyes, knowing how weak and pathetic he was, but the woman didn't seem to care about that, offering him some fruit to replace the devoured sandwich. The woman was kneeling next to him, uncaring of the mud staining her dress, uncaring of his own state. The sight, the smell, he knew he must look like death warmed over. He'd been disgusted looking at his own reflection, that he knew. He watched over her as she stood up once he finished eating, and offered him her hand. Clearly, she understood there was a language barrier and didn't bother trying to speak, instead turning to actions to convey her meaning. She wanted him to go with her. He paused for a moment, the selflessness inside him warring with every other instinct never to trust a stranger, warring with every irrational thought that he deserved to die, with every rational thought that he should not take advantage of her. She seemed to decide for him, reaching out to grip his tiny shoulders, no longer filled with the muscles that had long since been robbed of life. He pulled him up. Clearly he was light enough that this slim woman could just about carry him, which she seemed to easily do so for a few blocks until they arrived at what was likely her house. She took him into the bathroom and pointed to the bath and then his clothes. Percy, swaying from the exertion of the walk there, didn't have the energy to care about a stranger wanting to bathe him, so he nodded weakly and collapsed into the bath after she removed his rags. Percy floated in the warm cocoon, his eyes closing, wondering if this was actually his own version of Elysium, if, having been sacrificed, he deserved something other than the afterlife of his dreams. The water would have been home enough, foreign though it felt. There was no invigoration it provided him now, no magical healing of his wounds. Still, it reminded him of home in a very bittersweet way. Her hands were gentle on his body, rubbing the mud and blood off of him, trying as if to take away the pain that they brought and that had brought them. Her hands were also firm, cleaning in a way that was efficient, never lingering in one place too long, massaging the tired muscles that remained. Her fingers threaded through his hair, washing the months of blood, oil, and dirt caked to his skull. Percy thought she may have replaced the water 3 times, but he also thought he fell asleep at some point, so it may have been more. She shook him awake when she was finished, draining the water away and helping him balance while she patted him dry, leaving for a moment, only to return shortly after with some clean clothes that she helped him into. Percy found his mind floating. Those luxuries were so utterly foreign to him, and anything akin to them that he might have once had were echoes of a time forgotten now. She guided them to a bedroom and tucked him under the covers. She said something again, though Percy had no idea what, although the turning off of the lights, the closing of the door, the exhaustion that lay heavy on his body, that was clearer than anything, and so he slipped into unconsciousness once more. This time, when his eyes managed to open, he was a little more awake than he had been the day before. The surroundings were unfamiliar, of course, but he remembered the day prior well enough to not completely freak out. His body protested any movement he made, but gods damn it, Percy wanted to get his bearings. Every muscle screamed in agony, and he pushed himself into a sitting position, and then rotated to slip his legs off the bed. Grabbing onto the side table for support, he managed to stand on shaky legs and use the wall to make it over to the door. He reached out, gritting his teeth at the strength required to open the door, but filled with overwhelming relief that it wasn't locked, and peeked into the new room he was faced with. The woman he recognized from yesterday was there, talking to a middle-aged man. Both turned to look in his direction when they heard the door move, and Percy was frozen to his spot. The woman stepped towards him, a bright smile on her face, while the man watched his movements with a narrowed eye that put Percy a little on edge. He had died. He knew that for a fact. So where was he? How did he get here? Who was this woman, and who was this man? Now more awake and alert, the questions were rushing forth faster than he could think them. The woman beckoned him to come toward them, which, after a moment of hesitation, Percy decided to do as she asked. At least he tried. His legs gave out from under him. As he fell, the two rushed towards him, which rationally knew was trying to help, was to try and help, but his instincts weren't rational. He floundered backwards, heart skipping and breath shaking. He was still weak and had no strength to truly retreat, so he had to watch, paralyzed with fear, as the stranger leaned over him, hands holding something that he knew was a type of syringe. He felt enough enter his body, inject something, take blood over and over. No! His voice was hoarse, echoes of the damage he knew he had experienced over months and into his final moments. Please, no more. He was tearing up, sobs welling up into his chest. He thought dying would mean he could leave it all behind. He was so tired of it all, of everything he'd had to go through. The man, seeing his distress, at least backed off a little, holding his hands up in surrender. He put the syringe in a bag before turning his attention back to Percy. Ah, English. My apologies, young man. The accent was fairly thick, but Percy at least understood what he was saying. I'm not here to hurt you. Osmicon found you yesterday, and you were very hurt. I'm the village doctor. She called to help heal you. Percy wanted to believe him. Rationally, he knew the officer was sincere. Instinctually, which is all he'd been running on since they'd taken him all those months ago, he couldn't trust anyone but himself. When the first attack had come, they trusted each other, only for internal conflict to quickly break them apart. When the numbers dwindled far, far too fast, they trusted the gods, their parents, to help them. Instead, they were abandoned, even taking the strength of their powers with them. Both betrayals had cut him deeper than any of the others. What was with his fatal flaw and all? That in and of itself had been the first form of torture he'd endured because of their killers. He had no one to rely on but himself now, his powers nearly forgotten in the depths of his memories. He must have passed out, because the next thing he knew, he was back in the bed he had woken up in, some soup steaming away on the table next to him. A flash of suspicion went through him before hunger demanded to eat it, no matter what it may contain. His hands were shaky, and he spilled probably a quarter of it, but what he was able to eat made him feel a little better. He tried to get out of bed again, but was only just swinging his legs around when the door opened. Startled at the sudden noise, he jumped back into bed, and worried eyes turned on him. It was the woman again, and she saw him sitting up, bowl empty beside him. She smiled warmly. "Ah, you awake?" Her English was broken, not as fluent as the man had been, but Percy appreciated her words all the same. "Where?" His voice trained off into a croak of disuse. She walked slowly over to him and offered him a glass of water. After taking it, she sat on the corner of the bed. "Minami, Kaifu district of Tokushima?" His blank look seemed to cause a frown line to mar her face. "Japan." Oh, wow, that was not America. Although, to be fair, he wasn't sure he had died. He might not have been in America for months. How? He forced his voice to cooperate, desperate to know what was going on. Her expression softened again. "I found you yesterday morning in alley. Look like you need help?" Percy tried not to think about what he might look like. He looked like a walking corpse. Well, he was one, really. "I do not know where you're from, but I want to help you. You safe here. My friend is doctor. He will help, yes?" Looking back, maybe Percy had stopped caring what happened to him now. That's why he agreed to the doctor's poking and prodding. Or maybe his heart once more won over his brain, and hope bloomed in his chest for the first time in a long, long, hopeless time. So he gave in to her request of letting the man enter his new space, and his personal space. The man introduced himself as Ito Haruki, and his friend, the woman who had found him, as Hayashi Asashi. As Percy lay there, anxiety shaking his body, Ito gently explained everything he noticed and everything he was doing. Percy also expected questions like who he was or what had happened to him. They never came. Ito said his job was to heal him, not to pry. He said he would listen if Percy wanted to talk, but he would not force it. In the end, Percy now knew the state of his body and understood just why the doctor was surprised. He was even conscious, let alone alive. With seemingly every other bone broken or fractured, skinny to the point of literal skin and bone, wounds littering his body, and many more things that Percy didn't understand the technical names of. The wound he cared about most, though, was the one the doctor pulled a snapped blade of celestial bronze from. The doctor found it burned in his thigh, and with a stricken face extracted the 3-inch length from his leg, cleaning and stitching up the wound. Percy eyed the metal. He needed to keep it. Gods knew where he was, and there may be no other celestial bronze he may come across ever again. Besides, no mortal should learn about it, and that had been drilled into him. Too, as a child of the Big Three, monsters would surely come looking for him at some point. Later, he would use it to make into a dagger, small enough to carry on him at all times. For now, Ito gave it to him when he asked for it. "I'd like you to rest up for a few weeks, my boy." The endearing term gave him warmth, a faint memory of Chiron flittering through him. Maybe it would all be okay in the end. "I have no idea what you've gone through, but whatever it was, you need a lot of recovery. I have plenty of medication I'll prescribe you to start on the healing process, and I know Asashi-chan's cooking will do the rest. When you start feeling a little better, we'll work on your physical therapy. For now, though," Ito smiled warmly, "I think you'll be okay." Hope fluttered in his chest, stronger this time. Ito left not long after that, talking to Asashi. What he now knew was Japanese. Percy spared a thought to wondering why he had somehow come to Japan, and whether after he healed, if he could go home and try to find everyone. The moment he had that thought, though, he discarded it. No, he would never go back to America. He still had no real idea who it was that destroyed them, but he knew they had. He doubted anyone was alive anymore, and he definitely didn't want anyone knowing he had somehow survived. They would torture and kill him again. He would not go through hell a third time. Tartarus, and being a prisoner of war, that was more than anyone should experience in one lifetime alone, let alone both before the age of 18. Percy would stay in Japan then. No one would think to look for him here. Gods, he would never come to the place if he hadn't woken up here randomly. He would stay and help Asashi as much as he could, forever thankful for her and looking after him. The days turned to weeks, but eventually, Ito, "Please, call me Haruki," was confident in his health enough to take him for a walk around the little village. They'd been working up the strength in his legs, and Percy could walk well enough on his own for short periods of time. They would not soon forget the months of disuse and trauma they experienced, though. Time spent healing was always tough for demigods. That Percy knew. It was the ADHD. That's why Ambrosia was so helpful. A, it meant they could get back into battle faster, especially given their limited numbers, but also B, it prevented them from dying of boredom. He was not so lucky here. In saying that, the water still helped a little bit, certainly not as much as it used to, and it took so much effort to heal even a paper cut, but it was more than nothing. That also gave him hope. Maybe he could train his skill back up. It was something he was supposed to have been born with, and gods or no, it was his power, damn it. The smell of sea breeze filled his nose as he stepped outside. Tears filled his eyes and happiness filled his heart. He loved the sea, no matter what his father had abandoned him again. It still smelled like home. Also, she had brought him some clothes, too. Something else he was determined to pay her back for, and so, clutching Haruki's arm, the pair made their way slowly but surely down the street of the little village and onto the water's edge. The ocean touched his toes, and Percy couldn't help the bubble of laughter that came from his soul, the relief, the joy he felt. He was safe here, in this tiny little town by the sea. As the sun set, and Percy reluctantly followed Haruki back to Asashi's house, he couldn't help but notice the curious yet warm faces that watched him. He knew, of course, being the small village that it was, that his presence would be noticed. No outsiders came here, really, but what surprised him was when he heard them referring to him as Asashi's adopted son. That hope inside him grew brighter. Yes, he had a new home here. While he would always remember his mom, Sally Jackson, his new stepfather, and his sister, Percy knew he would never go back, and he was thrilled to have found a new home here, surrounded by such wonderful people. His adopted mom had also sourced him a tutor, determined to get him fluent in Japanese. While Percy normally hated school, what with his ADHD and dyslexia, he had agreed to at least try as part of his thank you to Asashi. He found it a lot easier than he expected, and he wondered occasionally how much that was down to the nature of the language. His determination to try, or his tutor actually understanding what his disability was and helping him through it, adjusting their teaching methods. It boggled Percy's mind. He never had a teacher do that for him before. When his strength slowly returned, he began to pick up some of his old training techniques, determined to get back into shape. He would not be caught unaware again, and he was determined to excel without the use of his powers. On top of that, he had started Aikido, wanting not only to become more involved with the culture of his new home, but to expand his fighting styles beyond sword fighting. Over time, his confidence and peace regrew. His body had healed, as had his mind, for the most part at least. He was back into training, which he loved, in a little village by the sea. His old life he wanted to forget, and embrace this far more beautiful new one, except for one thing. Well, two, really. The celestial bronze dagger he had reforged, and his water powers had slowly been building back up. He was damned if he was ever relying on someone else to save him again, or be the source of his power, at least. They had been crippled when the gods abandoned them. If Percy could emulate that power, then he'd never have to worry. He'd never abandon himself. He started at home, in the sink or the bathtub, remembering the sensation of the water as he controlled its flow, its temperature, its movement, how it felt wrapped around his arm, healing wounds, returning life. He remembered the sounds fish made when they talked to him, and the sensation of sinking to the ocean floor, water filling his lungs and breathing anyway. For a long time he worried he would never experience any of that ever again. Then the water droplet moved. Elation burst out of him, and he wanted to scream and cry and sing from the rooftops. It was small. Oh, such a small achievement. But he'd done it all by himself. Gods be damned. The learning curve was exponential. The one droplet turned into a puddle, the puddle became a wave, the wave became a sea, and the sea became an ocean. The drizzle became a torrential downpour, and Percy swam through it all with the ease of a shark that he was. The uncomfortable realization came, however, when he realized the power he could put out was relational to the feeling he was experiencing at the time. The angrier he felt, as he subconsciously remembered his past, the stronger the pull. He didn't know if he liked that, or even really understood it, but he would take it over the helplessness he felt in the parched desert that entombed him before. Emotions had always been tied to his powers anyway, so he let them wash over him, experiencing them again and again, accepting what had happened to him, and refining his control in the process. It wasn't long after some of his power returned that he saw the first monster. It wasn't the normal kind of monster he was used to, though, but it certainly wasn't human, yet no one seemed to pay it any mind, meaning they either couldn't see it, or it looked normal to them. He could see it, though, and once it realized he could, it went straight for him. His form was still shaky, as he was still recovering, and his training had really only just begun, but he managed to stab its head with his celestial bronze dagger and watch it fade away. He frowned. No shower of gold sludge, but maybe they worked a bit differently in Japan. Regardless, Percy made it his mission to kill every single one of the damned things that crossed his path. It became part of his training regimen. After that, his walk around the village became a kind of patrol, and every other day or week he'd find one or two and dispatch them. It was a good feeling, attacking a real opponent, and let him process what he'd gone through, at the same time as helping his new village. It was a bonus seeing the positive influence it seemed to have, and while he still didn't really understand it, he was more than happy to take on the silent role. It wasn't long before the people in the village grew to love him, initially wary of a foreigner showing up randomly in their quiet town, nearly dead and ready to keel over, to being Asashi's newfound son, appreciation of his respect for their culture, and the increased happiness his presence just seemed to have brought, which was actually his killing of the curses, not that anyone knew that's what it was. Life, Percy admitted to himself, was looking up. And that is the first chapter. I'm going to stop it here. I was thinking I might have been able to do a second chapter, but we're at 20 minutes, and I don't want to start another chapter if we're already at 20 minutes. Anyway, I hope anybody who's actually watching this enjoyed, because I know this is definitely out of the ordinary. And, I don't do a lot of anime fanfiction. I might start doing My Hero ones at some point, but that depends on if I can find any good ones I actually want to do that haven't been done already. Because one of the only My Hero fanfics I've, ever actually wanted to podfic it's one called Screech, but I know that at least one other person has done it already. Yeah, and I honestly can't wait to get further into this, because this fic is, it's probably one of my favorite ones I've ever read. I know I say that about a lot of fics, but a lot of these fics I read are just some of my favorites. Oh yeah, school starts on Wednesday, so I'm not looking forward to that. And that same day I had my first volleyball game. I made it on varsity, even though I'm a freshman, so I'm playing varsity volleyball as a freshman, woo! Yeah. Dude, they were like, make sure you don't say anything negative or anything on your social media, or don't bring your personal life into your social media. It was something like that, or it was you shouldn't have social media and shit. And yeah, and here I am with about 200 subscribers on YouTube. Because that's who I also have a Tumblr, though I haven't posted much on there. I did post, what was it? I posted the first chapter of a fanfic I'm writing over on Tumblr, if anybody wants to go read that. My name over there is, Adicron Writes. Adicron _ wait. Is it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Adicron _ Writes. And either way, what did I call it? Actually, no, never mind. And then I actually have two fanfics I wrote, that I have posted on Ao3. It's called The Trauma of Death and The Imprisonment of Death, and they're both about Thanatos. Specifically Hades' version of Thanatos, and specifically about the Sisyphus myth, because Thanatos is a big part in that. I love Thanatos. And then I do have some other stuff on my Ao3 account, but that was actually posted by one of my friends. And I have a Pinterest where I have one thing posted. That's Adicron _ pins. Or Adicron dash pins? I use too many similar fucking usernames, and I don't want to link any of it in the description because I don't feel like it. Anyway, God, I've been rambling. Oh yeah, actually, I've decided I'm going to read my two fanfics that I've wrote for my birthday. On my birthday, I'm going to read those two, and I'm going to post them probably as one video, though I might post them as separate videos on the same day, or my birthday weekend or something. But that'll be a break from these two fics, because these two are going to be running for a while. The two fics I've got going right now are going to be running for a long while, because this one's 42 chapters and 170,000 words, 174,000 words, and then Coral Palace is 33 chapters and what was it? Not 200,000 words, I think. These are both really long, and I'm probably going to do them chapter by chapter. Though with this one, I know these chapters are a bit shorter than the ones in Coral Palace, so some of the videos I might be able to do two chapters in one, but I probably won't do that often. Anyway, I hope you all have a good night or day wherever you are. I hope you all enjoyed this, even though I'm probably never going to do a JJK fic again. But, hope you all enjoyed. Bye.